5. Welcome. Welcome to our members of the public. For obvious reasons, there's quite a lot of interest in this, so please remember to be respectful to everybody and everybody to be respectful back, okay? And let's enjoy ourselves if possible. I don't know if that's possible, but we'll try. So, on the first note, today we have members of the public to come and speak to us, and we have a few of them. They would like, to, I believe, to stay in their positions at the front. I hope that's okay, which will mean when they press the mic, for those of you at the back, you'll be able to see on the screens for them, okay? Right, however, the first gentleman would like to go, the two gentlemen would like to go out, three gentlemen want to go. Any more takers? And the fourth. Yeah, they've all changed their minds. There's a surprise. Okay, right, so without further ado, welcome to our first speaker, please, which is Abergavenny Town Council, Councillor Philip Bauer. Did I say that correctly? Thank you.
Not really, but I don't care.
Don't you? How do I say it?
Bowyer.
Bowyer.
Yeah.
Right, Bowyer.
We used to make bows.
Okay.
I haven't done that for a long time. So, Chair, thank you for giving us this. Start again. Chair, thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. My name is Philip Bowyer. I'm an elected member of the Abergavenny Town Council, and for this year, I am the Mayor of Abergavenny. Hence this bling. I don't wear it all the time, by the way. It should be taken as a compliment to us and our town, I'm sure, that so many people, some a distance removed from there, should take such an interest in the future of our buildings, or at least one particular building in our town. There are, in fact, several hundred listed buildings in Abergavenny, and it's our intention to try to keep as many as possible in the best possible condition and for the biggest length of time. We want to preserve our heritage for future generations living in the town to enjoy. So why is the old library so important, so dear to us? First of all, because it's an embodiment of an age of philanthropy. Carnegie donated some of his enormous wealth to the education and supply of information to everybody, a philosophy which is barely alive today. And secondly, and most importantly, it will be remembered by thousands of people who have used it over the years, remembered for the books they borrowed, remember for the books they actually read, which helped them to open their minds to knowledge, excitement, and adventure. Or just perhaps the people who met individuals in that library or groups in that library. It has great memories for a lot of people. So what to do with your old, much-loved building? First, it's a problem of the fabric of the building. It's getting old, and those of you who are as old as me know that when you get old, things don't always work properly. Bits start falling off, and the building is just the same. We need a way of investing in that building which will keep it for future generations. And that is part of the agreement which we have seen with the Muslim Association, that they will take responsibility for the maintenance and repair of our building. And it will remain, as it has always done, a community building owned by the MCC for future generations. But of course, this is not just about stones and mortar. We pride ourselves in being a town of sanctuary. We started working some years ago with Syrian and Afghan families, and more recently Ukrainian families, all with different beliefs and customs which enrich all of our lives. And as a town council, we have unanimously supported the Town of Sanctuary group. We have a proud record of tolerance in our town. People of so many different religions have coexisted peacefully, and the Muslim Association are already part of that culture. They're already active in the town, working from the Catholic Community Hall, where they conduct their activities. That's a great example of religions working together. And now they want to create their own centre and to give more back to that community. The Muslim Association insists on the fact that they want to create a community centre to cater for their own needs, but which will be open to all. So we believe that it is important that as soon as possible, the contract, the lease which has been made, is finalised and that it can be put into action. Finally, just one thought. Who would have thought just a few days ago that we would see in our town hateful graffiti posters put on buildings, on this building? We must remember that actions sometimes have unintended consequences. So we urge this committee to think long and hard. It would be a great pity if any decision taken by this committee could be seen as questioning our goal of reaching a calm, peaceful community where everyone, regardless of origin or creed, can live in security, free from fear, filled with love. Let's get on with living together. Thank you.
Okay, so it would appear that the camera isn't working on the lectern, so I'm really sorry your speech wasn't recorded on film. Yeah, it was recorded on voice, so it was very good. Right, so my next question is, would you like to stay where you are on the front bench, in which case you'd be recorded on film, or would you just like to be recorded on voice, in which case help yourself to the lectern? Decision.
On film, so I'll stay.
Okay, so, and I'm sorry, I forgot to mention to everybody, but I'm aware that you have been told it's 3 minutes or thereabouts, please, okay? Thank you very much. Right, so the next person is Abergavenny Town Council, is Councillor Gareth Wild.
Okay. Okay, thank you for the opportunity to speak. And first, may I introduce the fact that I'm representing, I'm an accredited Baptist minister. I'm the Reverend Gareth Wild. I'm a minister and a resident of Abergavenny. I firmly believe that most churches would welcome a permanent place for Muslims to worship God in Abergavenny. Abergavenny has a rich history, a peaceful history of non-conformist dissent from as far back as the 17th century, when Christians fought for religious freedom for those who didn't follow the established church. These would include Baptists, Congregationalists, Quakers, and various other chapel-attending congregations. There are many chapels in Abergavenny. The Muslim Community Association of Monmouthshire is only asking to be treated with the same equality and the same respect as our predecessors. And if anything, I think they should be prioritised because they have nowhere to worship in Monmouthshire as a permanent place. As an accredited Baptist minister, I wholeheartedly agree with the MCC decision to let the Carnegie Library to the Muslim Community Association of Monmouthshire. I do wonder, it seems to me it's unusual for leases to be called out. It doesn't seem to happen very often, and I question if this request would have been called out if it had been any other group that had wanted to lease the building. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you for that. I hate to tell you, the film's not working on you either, so I do apologise. We do seem to be having some technical issues this evening.
Oh, well.
Okay, so that moves us on to Elizabeth Powell. Would you like to stay where you are, or would you like to come forward?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Come a little closer to the mic.
Okay.
And you'll feel a lot more comfortable. And the film's not on. That'll make you feel, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Accustomed as I am, etc. My name is Liz Powell. And
sorry, could you bring the mic a bit closer
sorry.
to? Yeah.
Can you hear now?
Well, yeah, I'm thinking about the people behind as well.
Okay. My name is Liz Powell, and I live at 7 Trinity Square, Abergavenny. which is an almshouse. The warden will explain the logistics of the almshouses later. However, my residence, the boundary wall is less than 15 inches away from the library. I'm totally overlooked by the library. I have reservations. I've read the Muslim Association business case, and very laudable, and they have aspirations to make it a very busy community centre. That's fine, but the building is far too near. I'm totally overlooked by 5 windows. I can literally touch the library. So I have massive reservations about noise and light pollution into my property, because I'm right up against it. I think you were there yesterday. Rachel's been there. I mean, logistically and architecturally, the land that the library is on was sold to them by the Rachel Herbert Trust, which is literally, well, it's at the end of the table there. And we're on ground level, so if there were lights on late at night or whatever, or the aspirations are weddings, funerals, festivals, I'm just concerned that there will be too much noise and too much light, because it's far too near where I live. So that's my feeling about why it could be detrimental for me personally and 8 other almshouse ladies.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, next person is Andrew Powell to speak. Hello, Andrew. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for letting me speak at this meeting. My name is Andrew Powell. I've been a landlord of pubs for 36 years this year, and I own the Growfield, which is 20 yards away from the library. We also own another pub down the bottom end of the street. That, to me, I don't think will be impacted at all. My concern is I feel as though the lack of consultation, I think MCC have handled this quite poorly, in as much as we are around the streets of the library, the population is of a certain age. And there's been a lot of people worried about it. Personally, I've got no worries about the building becoming a mosque. My worry is when I've read that they're coming from possibly as far away as Caerleon, Carwent, Usk, Monmouth. Parking is an issue. Parking is a huge issue in that area. And the unfortunate part about it is we bought the pub 19 years ago. The pub was actually shut. There was no windows, just metal bars on the outside. It was a real rough pub in Abergavenny. We've built it up. We now employ 8 full-time staff, 5 part-time staff. We do 800 to 900 meals a week. We sell 350 brewers' barrels a year. To put it into context, my minimum delivery of a brewery will be 8,000 kilos, going up to 15,000 kilos. On a Friday, we have, and I've got photographic evidence here, if you'd like to see it, I'm not sure whether you can, what it's like on a Friday outside the Growfield. And not just outside the Growfield, this goes all the way up past the library. We have at least 8 lorries on a Friday morning delivering to us. The last one generally is my brewery lorry, which is an Arctic. And my concerns are, if people are travelling and they're of an age to go to the mosque, which is fine, we do need to address the parking issue in that area. The car park opposite, people say it's a car park, it's a 2-hour car park. And there are several people that have season tickets. My son is one of them. He parks it for 5 days, he never moves the car. Now, it's only 28 spaces, so you're not going to have loads of parking spaces in that car park. You really aren't. Then you've got the free car park, which is a couple of 100 yards away, quite a steep hill coming up to. And I just would have liked to have been consulted that was there going to be any sort of provision for parking? And can we have some sort of consultation in as much What about the brewery lorry will only come back once. If he comes down the street and there's nowhere to park, he'll go and do 2 or 3 more drops, then he comes back. If he comes back and he cannot park outside even my pub or the library, he goes. And he's gone. He's not coming back. And then, we've got an issue. And all I'm asking for the council is, can we have some sort of consultation in trying to sort the car parking out in that area and doing it sooner rather than later? And basically, that is my main concern. And I will say, if anyone sort of is thinking I'm against it, I provided the police with video evidence of the person spraying the library the other night, which is an horrendous thing for them to do. And I have no axe to grind with anyone. I just feel as though we should have had a bit of consultation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, now Sarah Chicken, please, to speak.
Hello, thank you for letting us speak today. I'm actually here in my professional role as warden of the almshouses. My name's Sarah Chicken. The almshouses were given by Rachel Herbert. There's 8 houses either side of Trinity Church. I have 8 ladies who reside there within the grounds, which is a quiet, idyllic place. Most of the ladies are elderly, or maybe I've got a couple who are sick. They're very vulnerable, and they are in extreme proximity to the library. In fact, 5 to 8, which Elizabeth is living in number 7, is looking right on to the library itself, to the building, and there is a wall which divides it. There wasn't any consultation with us, with the trustees, with myself, and we first learned about this through Facebook. I actually went to the trustees and asked them to listen to what I had to say, because I felt that this was going to really impact on the community of the almshouses. And I think it will impact greatly. Noise, lighting, parking, which also is a huge concern, as Victoria Street is already congested. And the only free parking is in Byfield Lane. So being right in the middle of town, still there isn't any parking where you could park for any length of time. And I think that every day we have people parking in Victoria Street and surrounding streets off because they're working in town and they don't obviously pay the charges, so it's already congested. I'm obviously not against it, but it's not the right building for a mosque. My first and foremost thought when I read it, that safety for my ladies, and this is an issue I have due to responses from certain public members. And what my thoughts were when I spoke to the trustees was highlighted yesterday when I received a phone call from the police that there had been graffiti all over the walls of the library. When I actually went down to meet the police officer, the council workers were there trying to wash away the words, and it was apparent then that this wasn't a child or, youngsters, because it was brought to my attention that it wasn't even written with the right spelling. But actually, when I stood there, I took photographs and I Googled it. It was anti-Muslim, and the words in, big writing right across the wall, all over the doors of the library. And I think this is the first of a lot of issues that's going to happen around this area. And especially when you are right in the town. You know, you've got Andrew's got the pub not far away. You have people coming out of there at night. They may have issues with it being a mosque. And then we're going to have a lot of problems. We're going to create a lot of problems. And I just feel that we should have been consulted. It's all been done again very underhanded. And this building was left to the people of Abergavenny by Andrew Carnegie for the purpose of a library. And why did our council decide to move that library when it was already there, a listed beautiful building as a library? Why did they have to move it and then leave it empty? Because it's now it needs a lot of work on it and it's in disrepair. My other question is, the Muslim community have been given a 30-year lease, which was granted without a proper scrutiny. I was one of those people in the last couple of years who came here to try and get a day centre for people with disabilities in Tudor Street, and we had a lot of problems with that, and it was very similar reasons. And we have had 1 year lease. That's all it's had. The Muslim community has now got a 30-year lease if they get that building. I think that people like my daughter and others with disabilities should have been having the respect and given more than what they had. They've had to fight for what they wish to have, and a year is all they've got. So I hope that I've put my decisions across this evening.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, right, next we have a video from Yvonne Robinson. So that should, I hope, if technology permits, work. We're waiting. Bated breath. Nothing like pressure, is there? We thought we had this sorted. We practiced earlier on. We have, it just takes a while, quote unquote. Okay.
Hi everyone, I'm Yvonne Robertson. I live at Mardy, Abergavenny. It was my main town. I've lived here for over 50 years. I am very concerned to read in the Chronicle second-hand of such a monumental thing happening to our library. It's been empty a little while, bits and pieces going on, but empty. And I want to know why a decision could be made that's so important to the town. It's a gifted building, number one. And number two, I would like to know why a small unit of people can make such a big decision without consultation of the people. It's the area where it is. The mosque itself is not the problem. The problem is the siting of the mosque. It's a dreadful part of town for parking, everything. There are pubs there. It's just a difficult place to have a mosque. And we wanted to know, it's a big decision. Why was it taken without public consultation? What is the problem? Why can't the council have asked, put notices up to say what was going to happen, get some public feeling about what was going to happen? The building, I believe, was donated, so therefore is it a deed of covenant? What does that covenant say if it's no longer being used by and for the people of Abergavenny? There's a lot of things that this cabinet should have made public so that people can understand what's going on. We have no problem at all, as I said before, with the mosque. It's next door to a church. Now, have they been consulted? Because when there are funerals, etc. there, people can't park. It's well known. It's a difficult area. Trinity Church is very active, but I believe the mosque would be even more active because they get calls X number of times, day and night. And they are more, I think, perhaps I shouldn't say they were devout, but they are more faithful to their church than many of us. They attend very regularly. And will this cause serious bottleneck problems in an already busy town with the 20 mile per hour, etc., the queues going back up God knows where? I think we really need to look at this everybody, all our councillors, discuss what's happening. Another thing is, we're concerned about the night time, not so much about the religion, but about the night time. Is anybody going to be safe in a quite lawless Abergavenny at night time, coming out of mosques or churches at say 3 o'clock in the morning, which apparently is times that they may come out. They go in for dawn, they get about 5 or so many, I don't know how many calls a day, but they are, I think they're at risk where they are, and it's a very weird area. It's not in the centre of town, and yet it's right on the very outskirts of a town. I think we really need to stop this happening. The precedent is we need the council to discuss. Done.
Okay, thank you. I assume Yvonne might be watching, so thank you very much, Yvonne. Right, that leads us to one to be read out from a gentleman called Lewis Powell, and it's a written submission, and Hazel will read it for us. Thank you.
Yeah. So this is a written submission from Mr. Lewis Powell. I am a long-term resident living less than 20 metres from the old library building, and I've lived here for over 15 years. I'm deeply concerned and frustrated by the lack of transparency and consultation surrounding the proposal to convert this building into a mosque, the only one in Monmouthshire. The parking situation in this area is already at a breaking point. We're now being told that up to 50 people regularly attend the existing place of worship. If even a portion of those visitors, for example 30 to 40 vehicles, begin parking daily around the old library, the local infrastructure simply cannot cope. There is no realistic plan being communicated for how this will be managed. What's more troubling is the complete absence of outreach to local residents and businesses. At no point have we been contacted or consulted about how this will affect us. As a part of a local family business on Baker Street, I can say with confidence that this development risks serious disruption. We receive essential deliveries on Fridays, coinciding with the busiest period for the mosque attendance. Increased congestion and lack of parking may lead to gridlock, delayed access and missed deliveries. This isn't just an inconvenience, it could lead to tangible financial losses. The entire process appears rushed and deliberately opaque. It feels as though efforts have been made to push this through without public scrutiny, input or accountability. That is unacceptable. Local people deserve a say in major developments that directly affect their homes, livelihoods and daily lives. I strongly urge a halt to this process until a full, open and public consultation is conducted. Anything less is a failure of due process and community engagement.
Okay, thank you. Right, so that brings us to the end of the public area of the meeting, and without wishing to be too harsh on you, I'm afraid I'd like you in front to exit this room. We'll take a moment. If anybody here wishes a moment to leave themselves, they are welcome to, but we'll just take a minute.
No, they're not working. Chair.
No.
Okay, everybody, are we settled? Are we ready? That's lovely. Okay, so thank you, everybody, for that, and thank you for the public participation. It's much appreciated. So just now we'll go to the formal agenda. So on item 1, apologies for absence, which I believe we don't have, do we? Or do we?
Chair, we don't have apologies, but we do have a councillor being substituted today. So Councillor Emma Bryn has been substituted by Councillor Simon Howarth.
Okay, thank you very much. And then declarations of interest. Anybody's got declarations of interest? We're all happy? Great, thank you. Right, so now we go on to the reasons why we're here. So it's the call-in. So a call-in decision by the Cabinet on this, sorry, I'll read again, I do apologise. The call-in of the decision by the Cabinet on the 21st of May in relation to the letting of the former Abergavenny Library. So with that, I'd like just to say a few words. Now, we follow a process here now, okay? The call-in was very set. There's 3 items which we're allowed to discuss. 1 is lack of proper scrutiny, due process and community consultation. 2, questionable timing and limited market exposure, and best value and financial suitability concerns. I do apologise, I'm getting tongue-tied. I just would like to remind the members and everybody that all the information you've been given, some of it is for public and some of it is for private. So please be aware not to discuss the private papers. They are commercially sensitive and are not to be discussed in public session. Okay? I hope we all understand that clear as bells. So that for you gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen at the back, what that means is there's been papers, commercially sensitive papers, which we've had access to, which unfortunately are not public, and therefore should we wish to discuss them, that will change how the meeting runs. But we'll get to that when it happens, okay? So just to be aware, that may happen. But for our members here, the councillors here, we are not to discuss those private papers at this part of the public meeting. Okay, in case anybody's wondering why these three people have moved up forward, it's because the cameras aren't working. These three are the ones that have actually called the call in. I do apologise, I'm stumbling, I don't know why. So just to move on, we are going to do that now. I'll ask Hazel first to read the legal requirements about the call in, okay? So moving to Hazel, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I'm conscious that some of the members of the public might not really realise what a call-in is. So we'd like to just explain that a call-in relates to a Cabinet decision that was taken on the 21st of May regarding the former Abergavenny Library. So the agenda for this meeting includes the report that was taken to Cabinet, the Cabinet decision log, and then the call-in request by these three members that will be presenting their reasons to you. So I just want to explain that the process we'll be applying this evening is outlined in the Council's Constitution, which is our rule book, and it's called a call-in procedure. So the purpose of our meeting tonight is to consider the appropriateness of a decision that has already been made by the Executive and a decision that has now been called in by members of the Scrutiny Committee for Place Scrutiny Committee to consider. So just to be clear on the parameters of this committee is not able to make a decision itself. But having followed the Council's call-in procedure, this committee can do one of three things. It can either, number one, accept the Cabinet's decision. Number two, it could refer the matter back to Cabinet to reconsider and to give reasons why. Or number three, this committee could refer the matter to full council for consideration. So the procedure that we have, the call-in procedure, will allow for the members who requested the call-in to speak first and to outline their reasons for calling in the decision. Following this, the Cabinet member will be invited to respond, and also officers can respond. And then the Chair will ask the Scrutiny Committee members to comment if they wish to do so. Following that, there will be an opportunity for any other elected councillors to ask their questions prior to the committee considering their way forward. Only members of the Scrutiny Committee can then vote on which action to take out of the three that I've outlined. So now the Chair will commence the formal call-in procedure.
Okay, thank you. So to my left, we have three councillors, Councillor Simon Howarth, Councillor Rachel Butler and Councillor Louise Brown. So I'll pass to you three. Would you like to start, whether you want to, one of you or all three of you take it in turns, please? Please be mindful to speak to the call-in matters.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone, and good evening to the members of the public. My reasons for bringing this back to the Select Committee is reference to process, and I'll just give members just a rough idea of how we started here. I was part of the council portfolio many years ago when the library in Abergavenny, the old library, was a really hot topic when we had the issue with the cattle market, because we were going to build a new library on the cattle market site, and people in the area were really concerned about the old library. So the library has been on my agenda for many years, and the concerns making sure we retain the building and making sure we use it to our capacity the best we can. The library has been used. It was used for PRS, which is Pupil Referral Service, and then the library became on the agenda of asset management, and I'll just give some dates here, members. On the 10th of the 10th, 24, there was a meeting of this committee. The library was not on the planner. I'll say it again, the library was not on the planner. On the 7th of the 11th, 24, the library was added to the planner, but the meeting of the 7th of the 11th, 24, which was people's scrutiny, had no visible option to look at the library to go onto asset management. It was added onto the planner on the 21st of the 10th. The cabinet meeting was on the 6th. So the 6th was the day before that select committee was able to view that planner and ask questions. And I'm very clear on that. And as a member of this council, I am really strict on the planners. And the planner is the forward plan of this council. So let me be clear, when the library was transferred to asset management, we as a council did not give members opportunity to discuss where we were going to go with that library. We then have a planner which should itemise items which have already been discussed and a decision's been made, and we had that as a council. Them decisions were actually taken off the planner for whatever reason. It was removed. So we make a decision, they were still included on the planner as a decision made. Somebody made a decision in this council to remove previous items. So we get back to where we are with asset management now. Asset management, on the 12th of the 5th, this committee had a meeting on the 12th of the 5th. There was nothing on the planner at all reference to the cabinet meeting and the disposal of the library. And so happens, the cabinet was on the 21st of the 5th. Guess what happened? The day after, place scrutiny meeting, where it was on the planner. That's one reason why I've called it in. As a council, I think open transparency is so important, and that's my job here as an opposition member, to make sure that the people of my county have a questionable answer from me and others, making sure that we're doing things properly. I've just proven here that we are not doing things properly, and that has to change. And that will change. From today, it will change, because we as members will be bringing this council a changing constitution. We've got to leave things on the planner, making sure that we as councillors and the public know what decisions we've made and know what decisions we're going to make. It's wrongfully wrong that we've got to today. You can blame us as councillors, you can blame anyone, but let me tell you now, there's many of us here are working really hard to make sure you as a public can engage with us and make sure we're transparent in what we're doing. I agree with most of what's been said today, a reference to consultation. I'm sure my colleagues will get into that now. So that's what I want to say, and that's why I'm really strong about calling this in, because I feel we've let down Monmouthshire and we've let down the people of Abergavenny as a council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Right, now to Councillor Rachel Butler.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for everyone coming today, because I think it's really important that we engage with people about this subject, and I'm delighted to see everyone here. This call has not been done lightly, but the importance of the Carnegie Library and its significance to the town of Abergavenny and its residents is overwhelming. I've been lucky enough to call Abergavenny my hometown for nearly 40 years, and I understand the importance of the building to the town. It is one of the most important civic buildings that exists in Abergavenny, and its cultural and historical value is immense. recognised not only by our community, but also by CADU, which protects it as a Grade 2 listed building within a designated conservation area. It is part of the fabric of Abergavenny, and the reasons for the original gift of land from the Herbert family and Andrew Carnegie's foundation donating this wonderful building still stands. The first time people heard about it was to read about it after the event in the Abergavenny Chronicle on May the 28th, or on Facebook. The community deserves a voice in determining the future of a building that has served us all for over a century. I've been talking to the residents who live near the Carnegie Library, and without fail, residents said I was the first person to come and ask their views. Councillor Louise Brown has also talked to businesses and residents in the area. It's not acceptable that residents have not had a voice. Many people said the same things, but here is a flavour of what residents have said. They wanted me to articulate their views and tell you how disconnected and ignored they feel. We are particularly worried about parking, as it is difficult enough now. People are really worried about parking. People have had to move from here because they are blocked in and cannot park in their own streets. You have people waiting in their cars from 6:30 a.m. with their mugs of coffee so that they can park in our streets when residents drive off to work. In the evenings, you see neighbours rushing out of their houses to bag a space in their street when visitors leave. It would be funny if it wasn't so stressful. It's been done behind everyone's back. It feels ham-fisted and patronising. We didn't know. We feel in the dark. It's been forced upon us. The first we heard about it was in the local paper. We were never consulted. We are very concerned. I thought it was a joke. Do they not know where the building is? Trinity Church, were they consulted? The Carnegie Library was given to all the people of Abergavenny. Loss of a building that was given to Abergavenny. Should be for all the people of Abergavenny. We should be given our say. Why? Cannot see a basis for it.
Yeah, excuse me.
Somebody recording it.
I'm going to be taking the
Sorry.
on my phone, so it's
Okay. Thank you. All right, if you'd like to, sorry, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I think he's still recording, so.
Recording the meeting, stupid man. What an idiot.
Perhaps step out and sort it out, Steve. Councillor Garrett, if you would, please. I don't know. I'd like to, Councillor Garrett, if you might just step out and then we can. Are you done? Okay, thank you. Sorry about that, Councillor Butler. If you'd like to step back a little to catch your throw again, if you will.
Yes, I think I will. I think it should be for all the people of Abergavenny. We should be given our say. Why? Cannot see a basis for it. We are really upset. People of Abergavenny feel let down. It's a really important building to Abergavenny. I am fine about the decision, but I do agree there hasn't been enough consultation. We haven't heard from any of our councillors, nothing. They won't even reply to our emails. Is it another Tudor Street? No information has been given before the decision and there is no detail. I didn't imagine it could be done without consultation. My neighbour wanted to make his porch 6 inches bigger, and I got 4 letters from the council asking if I was happy about it. But with a decision as important as this, we hear nothing. My car has been hit 11 times in the last 2 years because of all the people who tried to park here. I've given up repairing it. Why has this been a fait accompli? We haven't been heard. Mr. Carnegie left the building to the local community for educational purposes. He did not leave it to the council to do what they wish with it. Without proper debate, we risk alienating residents and disregarding the public affection for this historic site. There have been no public meetings and no engagement raising concerns about transparency and community acceptance of the proposed change. There has been no engagement from local councillors, and that a decision of this magnitude could be done without consultation has left people in shock. The reasons for our call-in are clear. There has been no community consultation, an absence of scrutiny and due process. At the Cabinet meeting of 21st of May, the councillor for the Grovefield ward, Councillor Laura Wright, sat as part of the Cabinet and said not one word about this decision. Not one word. At the same meeting, Ben Callard, Cabinet Member for Resources, said that the decision needn't go through the planning process. On what reasonable basis should a building of this significance in Abergavenny only be granted a certificate for lawfulness, so that no one has any say on any aspect of this? This does not address concerns about the process gone through, nor details of the proper assessment. We cannot be sure that this has been done, let alone any community consultation. On the point of why there has been no referral to a scrutiny committee or any attempt at an oversight of this decision, Mr Callard stated as the Cabinet had made a previous decision to transfer it to the Landlord Property Department, it was delegated to officers. Again, why was it reasonable that a building of this importance was sidelined as if of no consequence? Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. He also stated that financial information had been supplied, but that information that has been supplied raises concerns about viability. There have been no attempts to address Councillor Richard John's concerns that granting a 30-year lease on this basis was troubling. There are various serious concerns regarding tenders and scoring matrices, and I hope that we will be able to go into these in more detail if allowed. The Deputy Leader of the Council, Councillor Paul Griffiths, stated that several council buildings in his ward and others rely on grants to operate, and grant funding has been accepted as essential to this bid. However, there are no details of grants applied for, nor guarantees given that these funds will be forthcoming, and the connotations of such a long lease being granted are myriad. This begs the question of due diligence. This follows a pattern of disconnection between the Cabinet members and the officers. There is a pattern of poor decision-making, of lack of scrutiny that is not acceptable or desirable. The call-ins are racking up, and you do not do a call-in unless there are serious concerns to be addressed. Monmouthshire Council is a council that deserves the highest standards from its elected members and its officers. I think Monmouthshire County Council is a wonderful council, and this process is not what the council or our residents deserve.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Brown. Thank you. Again, remind everybody, please stick to the reasons for calling.
Yes, thank you. The reason I called this matter in is because I'm on the Place Committee, and I very much believe that decisions made should be subject to scrutiny and should be subject to community consultation. And I always believe and always take a good note in my ward of what the residents' voices and what their views are on any particular matter, because I was elected by them and I need to represent what they're saying. But also in relation to general council matters, there is a concern to ensure there's proper scrutiny, due process and community consultation. In terms of the first heading of lack of proper scrutiny, due process and community consultation, democratic community engagement is necessary in view of the lack of public scrutiny due to no planning approval being needed, so that residents, businesses, faiths and the general public do not have the usual opportunity to comment on issues such as traffic congestion, parking, noise and restriction on hours of operation. The restrictive covenant on the land includes not to use the land for any purpose which may become a nuisance to adjoining land, and for business use, manufacturing, retail or wholesale, not to carry out such businesses outside the hours of 8 to 8 p.m. The most clear procedural irregularity has been how recently, despite the Cabinet report being on the 21st of May, the letting of the Abergavenny Library was not listed on the Council and Forward Planner for the very next day's scrutiny meeting, despite other Cabinet reports being mentioned, which is a clear breach of the procedural rules. The invitation to tender underlined the planning status with its current D1 class as a library, but did not fully detail commercial options on change of use, including retail and wholesale use, despite the covenant on the land allowing for such use. It just said, any other classes of use, contacts estates, if you have a look at the particulars in the supporting documents. So it was just guesswork what other uses could be. This would also impact the best consideration obtained for the property as required by the Council's Asset Management Strategy 23 to 27 for disposals, as outlined in the Council policy, which emphasises the importance of obtaining the best consideration and the legal requirement to do so. The Cabinet report of the 6th of November 2024, which allowed for this disposal, stated that the property is a well-known asset and is suitable for a range of different commercial or community uses, but the invitation to tender did not make that clear at all. There was questionable timing and limited market exposure. The property was marketed for only 4 weeks in December 2024. Actually, it was less than 4 weeks, as appears to go from the 26th of November to the 20th of December, during a well-known period of reduced public and business engagement due to the festive season, limiting the time to even put in tenders or go into any more details on them. The limited window may have inhibited fair market exposure, potentially impacting the breadth and quality of submission. Under the other heading of best value, in terms of best value, no doubt it will be argued that the $6,000 per year or $500 per month is the market value. However, the evidence is that this is not the opinion found in the Council's own open public budget paperwork of a reasonable market rent to be achieved of $20,000 to $25,000 per annum, and not evident from the fact that even a one-bedroom flat cannot be obtained for less than £700 a month in Abergavenny. And on Rightmove today, retail properties are currently advertised on commercial retail on Rightmove for £20,000 to £27,000 for between 1,261 square feet and 1,388 square feet. And this is a building of nearly 3,000 square feet considered to be in reasonable condition. There has been no independent valuation, and a 30-year commitment without such due diligence is premature. There is also a lack of certainty over the need for a council building over such a long period. It would seem that the council, under best value and due diligence, needs to get its own independent valuations of the value of the building as a freehold leasehold considered, and also consider the need for any repairs. In addition, there needs to be a period of community consultation in cases where there is no opportunity for the public to comment due to the lack of the need for planning, and it should be re-tendered. Interestingly, paragraph 3.14 of the Cabinet report of the 21st of May that made this decision said the lease will be drafted and then there would be community engagement. This is surely the wrong way round. I would suggest the way forward would be to use a specialised agent as outlined in the Council's own policy on disposals and asset management strategy, which states that in circumstances where the disposal is considered specialist or requiring broader marketing, external agents can be assessed to facilitate this disposal. Officers should seek to enhance the value of assets wherever possible, including the commissioning of surveys and securing planning consent wherever possible to reduce the development risk and uncertainty for prospective purchasers, thereby increasing the capital value. So I think there's a lot of different issues, but obviously one of the main issues that has been raised here is about the lack of public consultation, and to have a Cabinet report that suggests doing this after after the lease has been drafted, well, it doesn't really make any sense at all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, now at this point, I'm going to invite my three colleagues to return to their seats whilst we give the chance for next the Cabinet member for this issue to have his chance to respond to those thoughts, and from that we will go to the officer who is responsible for it. So just bear with us another couple of minutes. I do apologise, everybody. Thank you. Okay, so it appears we're all settled again on that matter then. Hazel, the clerk's just disappeared for a comfort break a second, but we can continue. If I'd like to now hand over to the Cabinet member, Councillor Ben Collard, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you also to all the members of the public for coming along. It's really nice to see all this engagement with this issue. And thank you also to the councillors for bringing the call in to give us the opportunity to go into a little bit more detail about how we arrived at this place. I'd start by saying that I guess, unlike the councillors that brought the call in, I do live in Abergavenny and I do live in Grovefield Ward, and I represent Grovefield Ward on the Town Council. So I am invested very heavily in this area. Indeed, I can see the library from my house. But this topic of the proper scrutiny and due processes and community consultation, I think it is an interesting one in the context that we have here with regards to leases. You may be aware the council has many assets and it enters into a great deal of leases. Since 2022, we've entered into 37 leases, and if you include licenses and short-term agreements, that's 63 in total. They've all used the same process, but none of the others have been deemed to require pre-award scrutiny or indeed have been called in at this stage in the process. I think in order to help explain that, I'll go into a little bit of detail about the delegation of powers when it comes to leasing. I know Councillor Howarth mentioned this about how some decisions can be taken by full council, some decisions can be taken by cabinet, some decisions can be taken by an individual cabinet member, and some decisions can be taken by officers. The awarding of leases falls to this lowest category where it can be taken by officers. In this case, because we knew how important this building was to the local community, we decided to bring this decision to Cabinet so it would have more oxygen and it would be, I guess, given more visibility in the community because we know how important this is. It seems that on one hand here we're being criticised for the delegated power being with officers, and then on the other hand we're being criticised for actually bringing it up to Cabinet in order to give it more oxygen. Councillor Howarth also talked about decisions being added to the planner. Lease decisions aren't normally added to the planner. I am not strongly minded that they should be, to be honest, because if we see the process that we go through to get to this place, we had a council asset which was declared surplus. Now, Councillor Howarth, you mentioned that you weren't happy with it being declared surplus. I would suggest to you that if you were unhappy with it being declared surplus, you should have called that decision in and not this one. But since it was declared surplus and the decision was not called in, we went out to tender And on that tender, as part of a transparent scoring matrix, which we've used in the past, we had a number of interested parties come back. One of those parties scored the highest, as you'll be able to see from the Cabinet report. Now, if at this point in time, rather than awarding to the lease to the organisation or or business, whatever it might be, that scored the highest according to this transparent scoring matrix that's in place, we would have said, we're not going to offer you the lease, we're going to go to the Council Scrutiny Committee. And then we come to the Council Scrutiny Committee, and they say, well, we don't like this idea. We don't like this idea of a lease. So what do we do then? We go back and say, I'm sorry, you've been eliminated from the process by councillors, may not be from the area, because they don't like this proposal. So what, we go to the second place? And we go to the community about that, and what if they don't like that? We heard a contribution earlier from the landlord of the nearby pub who mentioned that on a Friday they take a delivery from a number of HGVs. I would challenge that if that had been a council asset and it had come to this committee, that the people in the neighbourhood would not have wanted the lease to go to a pub because of the lorries pulling up outside. It seems counterproductive to me that we should have to go through such a process in order that we put our assets to their best work. The alternatives that we have here, the first alternative is to do nothing and leave the building empty. Now, I know when people talk about issues with parking in the local area that are pre-existing, that they might be happy to see the building left empty or potentially crumble, or for it just to be maintained as an empty building. But I would say that as an authority, that would be an irresponsible thing to do when we need to look after these buildings. And in that context, especially when, as an authority, we are in straitened financial times, I'd say it's also helpful if we can offload the responsibility to maintain what is a very expensive building to maintain to another group who have the funds and have the ability to maintain it. So, I'm all in favour of public scrutiny, and I believe it is essential that we are as transparent and open as possible. All of the reasons why this decision was made public. But I don't see how we can function as a landlord, in essence, if every lease that we come to offer, we have to bring to scrutiny. I'll cite a recent example of a commercial unit that we let. We had a production company, a film company, come to us and say, we'd like to let some space from you. We only need it for 12 weeks. Can we do it? We said yes. Here we go. We agreed terms, and it was underway. I'm not sure we would have been able to offer them that service, and indeed the value to the Monmouthshire taxpayer that letting that space enabled us to do, if we'd have had to say to them, well, hold on, we just need to go to a scrutiny committee first to understand if they would be satisfied with the way that you are going to use this council space. So I do think there are issues with like how we use that delegated authority and how we get best consultation with our neighbours. It was also mentioned at the time about the fact by Councillor Buckler that it doesn't need planning for its proposed use, and so that lack of it requiring planning means that it's not subject to further scrutiny within the planning process. I would say in response to that unfortunately we don't make the planning rules. We don't decide which planning designations cover which uses, and so we are as bound as anybody by those, and until the government changes what those planning uses mean, we don't have the power to change it. Moving on to the other items of the call-in, and this one wasn't really touched on actually in your introduction, but it was about the questionable timing and limited market exposure for the marketing of the building. We marketed the building for 4 weeks in December after it was declared surplus, a decision which, Councillor Howarth, despite what you say, you seemed satisfied with at the time. The question is, was that a reasonable time to market the property for in order to get best value? Well, we did receive a number of tenders during that period of time, so I think the fact that a number of tenders were received demonstrates that it was a sufficient period of time. I know it's always easy to say, but it could have been that, but it could have been this, but we could have got more money from it. But really, when we put a property up for tender, we ask the market, is there a demand for it, and how much are you prepared to pay for it? We could sit on an empty asset hoping that some very wealthy, very amenable person comes along in order to spend lots of money on this asset, and we leave it empty for extended periods of time while it further deteriorates, waiting for this this dream tenant to come along. Or actually, we can conduct a fair and open process. We can market our properties, and in doing so, actually, we can deliver best value for our communities. Another point raised in the call-in was about, you mentioned it, Councillor Brown, about the need for potentially an independent agent, or even an independent valuer to come and help us market and sell our buildings. I'd say again, and I'd remind you of the financial situation that councils find ourselves in. We have this resource ourselves. We have a team which successfully markets and deals with our property, entering into leases, in some cases disposing of it, and we have surveyors here as well who can also provide valuations. There is no need to spend taxpayers' money going out to more consultants to try and get a different answer when we have that capability in house. I know there was, during the inputs from members of the public, there were specific concerns that came up time and time again about parking. I hear those concerns. I walk down Vicky Street all the time. It's my way into town. And I agree with you, it can be a real nightmare. My expectation is that this is actually a very well-sited building for this purpose. Many of the community who propose to use it as part of a community centre and mosque live and work within our town. So many will be able to walk there, and those that can't, there is a small car park opposite, and it's within a 5-minute walk of 2 very large car parks. So I'd say it's actually quite well served for parking. Now, whether people currently park irresponsibly on Victoria Street, I know it's a problem, but that's not a problem with regards to the awarding of this lease. So I'd just like to reassure people that I hear that. But in speaking to the MMCA, they are also very cognizant, of this impact on the local community, and are very aware of the need to mitigate it and make sure that it's not exacerbated as a result of their occupation of this building. There was also a comment during the introduction about consultation from this group with the local community, and that it was intended to occur after the lease was signed rather than before it. It seems entirely sensible to me. I mean, if I was doing something and I had no certainty that it was going to happen, and I hadn't signed a contract to say I was going to do it or not, then I would wait until I'm in a point of certainty before I conduct that community outreach. And I know this group. I've met them, and I know how conscientious they are and invested in our local community. They are parents of children in our schools, and and they have a desire to make this work. They are already part of our community, and I really look forward to actually this community centre getting off the ground and becoming a success locally. I don't have a lot to add for the terms of the call-in. I'll hand over to Nick to see if he's got anything to add about any of the specific points, but after that I'm happy to take questions from the committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so now we go to the officer concerned. Nick, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. I'm Nick Keys. I'm the Acting Head of Landlord Services. So within the Council, I have responsibility for our land and property. I was the author of the report in question today. Only, I think, one very brief point, if I can, to add to the input that might be helpful. In the grounds for the calling, I know grant funding and the lease term was referenced as part of perhaps some concerns there. I think just to offer some comfort to the committee and members of the audience as well, it's very standard for community assets in our community to have long lease agreements, particularly with the county council. The reason they do that is it affords them greater likelihood of securing grant funding. So National Lottery, for example, Sports Wales, etc., are looking for assurance, because as you'll appreciate, what those grant funders would not want to have is that they're affording grant to a building or use, and then that use changes, and that investment that they've made is then moved away. So there are a long list of assets that I could mention that are tenants of ours already within the community who are benefiting from lease agreements that might be 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, 99 years, depending on their circumstances. Clearly, in the case of the preferred tender, the tender that we're recommending to be awarded for this property, they have requested a 30-year lease, and it is for that reason, is to have assurance that they can access some grant funding as set out in their business case. What you'll note is, as part of the recommendations of the Cabinet report from May, clearly the final terms within that lease is still to be delegated to officers and to be negotiated. So aspects such as a break clause or a rent review, etc., are elements to be determined. What you'll appreciate is clearly a break clause would undermine the very point that I've just suggested. So we brought the lease forward, and then the lease was tendered. The proposal was on the basis of a 30-year agreement, and the officer recommendation is to proceed on that basis. So yeah, with that, Chair, I think perhaps I'll stop and happy to assist with any questions. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, members of the public, thank you very much. I understand your enthusiasm, but please, okay, this is not around for every occasion. This is a council meeting, so please hold back on that. I appreciate your enthusiasm, but not tonight, please. Okay, right, now we move to the members of the committee to speak. So if any of the committee members have questions, please do. Those that haven't spoken as of yet, so anybody there, please, would like to put their hands up for speaking. Nobody? Oh, okay, hang on, let's just check those online. Anybody online? Oh, Councillor Thomas, please. Apologies, Thomas. I'm saying it wrong. Thomas Davis.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies. I was having some issues there accessing the hand function. I'll keep my remarks fairly brief, if I may, and I'm sure there'll be ample opportunity, perhaps in closed session, to interrogate some of the commercial underpinnings of the tender. But perhaps I can begin, Chair, with your indulgence, by associating myself with some of the spoken contributions from the public gallery this evening, and recognise, as I'm sure my fellow councillors would do so on this council, that Monmouthshire does indeed have a proud tradition of being an inclusive and tolerant and indeed welcoming community. Indeed, it's the very qualities that make us so proud to call this county home. But as we heard from the three signatories to the call-in, the focus of this call-in request before this committee this evening centres, in my mind, principally on financial considerations and that value for money test that we've heard from those three call-in applicants and in the Cabinet members' response. And it's those financial constraints which confront this authority that are uppermost in my mind this evening in approaching this question. in my view, the test to be applied by the Scrutiny Committee in fulfilling its duties is to whether the awarding of this tender, or indeed for that matter, the disposal of any future public asset, ultimately represents value for money to the Monmouthshire taxpayer, and crucially, whether in discharging those functions, it complies with the Council's legal and fiduciary duty to act, as I say, in the taxpayer's best financial interest. So with that in mind, I'd like to focus my remarks on those very questions. So noting what the Cabinet member has already said, he will no doubt recall that in February of 2023, if I'm not mistaken, this committee received a paper identifying the Carnegie Library, or the former Carnegie Library, as a surplus asset with prime commercial potential, which was earmarked in that asset strategy for priority disposal. And that same paper, I'm sure the Cabinet member will recall, estimated that the rental value, or the potential rental value of that property, could be in the vicinity of 25 to 30,000 per annum, or if sold on the open market, it could command a potential sale of circa 300,000. That same report, I'm sure Councillor Callow will recall, as indeed members of this place committee who deliberated and scrutinised that asset strategy, that same paper also made clear that such disposals were an essential tool in addressing the significant financial pressures confronting this authority. So with that context set out, namely for the public's benefit, who are observing tonight's deliberations, can the Cabinet member assure this committee, and indeed the public, that the proposed lease agreement aligns with that February 2023 asset management paper brought before this committee, which called for maximising the commercial potential from the former Abergavenny Library? Perhaps he would care to respond to that initially, then I might follow up with some supplementaries and some further comments, if relevant, Chair, if that's appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Callard.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Davis, for the questions. I think it's fair to say, I mean, you can see from the Cabinet report that through the tender, we didn't achieve the commercial value that we thought we may have done at a different point in time. But I think I challenge you on that assertion that that's the primary thing we should be looking about, even considering the financial constraints that we find within our council. It was mentioned by a member of the public earlier about the agreement that we have with Tudor Street. We have others with Abergavenny Community Centre. We've got agreements all over the authority where we forego income in order to support our communities. I think that's the right thing to do. I think it's not the right thing to do in every circumstance, but I think when we weigh up business cases, as we do in open tenders, it's very valid to consider that. But in fact, during this tendering process, the offer we received from MMCA was competitive with all of the offers that we received.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Callard. And there's no doubt in my view that this authority's commitment to equality and to community cohesion is beyond dispute. And the Cabinet members' reaffirmation this evening of those values are both commendable and indeed build upon the work of previous administrations, which I'm sure my fellow committee members would wholeheartedly endorse. But nonetheless, those policy considerations aside, if we were to focus squarely on the commercials of the successful tender, is it not the case that there was another tender which was deemed in the scoring matrix, which is publicly available, to be more commercially viable or commercially attractive to MCC? Could the Cabinet member just confirm that beyond any doubt?
I'm not sure that stays in this point. I think that's stuff that could be gone into private session, actually, Councillor Davis. I'm not sure if everybody else feels. Yeah, if you're happy to make a chair.
Thanks, Chair. I'll just add that from the shortlisted tenders that came through, not all the tenders, but the shortlisted tenders, this tender was the most financially competitive.
Very well. Can I pick up on a theme that the Cabinet member alluded to, which was the success over the past 12 months, if I understood correctly, of entering into, if I heard correctly, 37 lease arrangements in the past 12 months. Is that correct? I just wonder, as a general observation, and I appreciate I won't invite the Cabinet member to stray into any commercially sensitive conversations here, but of those 37 leases, how many of those would he deem to have achieved market rate? Because I suppose the concern here is that we are not necessarily maximising the commercial value of an iconic building, which we all recognise to be the case, and which this very council, in its very asset management strategy, identified as a priority for commercial opportunities. So of those 37 leases, how many of those have achieved comparable or above market rates? If he can divulge so now, or perhaps in private session, perhaps that's an issue we might interrogate further, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Callott.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the question. The 37 leases were since 2022. They were not in the last 12 months, and indeed it was 63 if you include licenses and short-term agreements. I don't have the data to my hands as to how many of those, achieved a valuation. What I would suggest is that when we meet a performance and overview scrutiny committee and we do review our performance against our, assets, that would be, a good time to table that.
Okay, thank you for the time being. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to Councillor Grocott now, please.
Thank you, Chair. One of the things that makes me most proud to be on this council and also on Abergavenny Town Council is the commitment that we have and do our best to implement to make Monmouthshire and Abergavenny a community of sanctuary. I think that is something that we should be very proud of. And certainly in Abergavenny in recent years, when we look at people who have moved into our community from places of conflict around the world and have assimilated and become positive members of the township of Abergavenny. What we are talking about here is not just the building of a mosque. We are talking about a group's plan to optimise the social value of what they would acquire. And so a mosque would not just be a place of prayer. It would be an educational centre, a social centre, an economic and a recreational centre within the community. The business case submitted by the Muslim Association sets out very effectively, I think, how the Muslim population in Monmouthshire has grown considerably over the last generation and are now a very important part of our community. Certainly in Abergavenny, with its major hospital. Many Muslims work within the National Health Service, attend our schools in Abergavenny, and are full members of our local community. There is something there in which we should take great pride. And I was appalled yesterday to hear about the daubing of racist graffiti and the painting of...
Okay, Councillor Grocott, sorry, be careful please. Stay to the grounds of the call-in, okay? Thank you.
Okay, sorry, Chair. Yeah. So the business case document really sets out very clearly what it is that the group who we are considering this evening are asking for. We have heard from the Cabinet member that far from disregarding the normal ways in which we should be conducting our business, it is entirely proper and reasonable. And at the end of the day, what is it that we are discussing here? At the heart of it is a building which has been empty for several years now. When it has been used, it was used as a pupil referral unit, which was totally inappropriate and brought no great credit to this organisation, to be putting children who had been, on the whole, excluded from education into a building with no play space, for example. We have got over that, but are we really suggesting that that building should just rot away? What are we looking for here? We're asking for a community to have a place to pray.
Okay,
to my mind, that's fine.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to bring you back yet again, please, to the 3 points of the call.
I'm done, Chair.
Thank you very much. Anybody else from the committee wishes to speak that hasn't already? I know Councillor Brown wishes to, don't worry. Please, Councillor Brown, please be aware of the timing of this and just take a moment. Okay, thank you. And again, everybody, the reasons to the call-in, okay? Let's not forget them. The likely lack of proper scrutiny, due process and community consultation, questionable timing and limited market exposure, and the best value for financial sustainability. I do apologise for not being able to say that word, concerns. Okay, so stay to those facts and reasons. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Brown, I do apologise, I thought I'd said it.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think the point that's been made and seems to have been missed is that if you were following the council paperwork, then you would have seen that in the Cabinet report on the disposal of the property on the 6th of November, it mentioned a range of uses, including community and commercial. Now, I don't understand why there wasn't any, and following from reading that report, one would have expected the invitation to tender to have included both emphasise both community and commercial, and it didn't do. So I think there's a question on that, because you would look at that report on the 6th of November and say, okay, it's going to be advertised for a range of things. It might even have a commercial heading. It didn't. And obviously we've talked about the limited time. The other point that I'd like to make, you've obviously mentioned there are quite a number of leases, but quite a number of these, I should imagine, are existing leases up for renewal as opposed to new leases. And if I recall the documents that were in the budget report for February 23, there was a limited number of properties that were actually seen as surplus to requirements and therefore disposal properties. And this is one of those. So there is actually I think there is a much more limited list than what you're effectively arguing is, we've got large leases, we can't possibly bring them all for scrutiny, but actually there is a much lower list of those properties. And with regard to the question about, we've already made a decision and, we can't go back on that sort of thing. Well, perhaps you should look at the documentation, because it says it's an informal tender, which actually means that you can negotiate and everything's up in the air until it's subject to contract. So the idea that, things were already concluded, I think is actually probably nonsense. So I do think we've heard also from the councillor who's just spoken about the business case. Well, unfortunately, we can't discuss the other business cases. So I don't think it's fair to actually concentrate on one in this open session.
I agree.
And
so
obviously,
let's not.
obviously, you know, there could be comparisons otherwise. So I think some of the arguments that have been brought forward, and actually in a recent scrutiny committee, I did ask for these properties to actually come for scrutiny, because if you actually look at the terms and conditions of the scrutiny committee, it does actually, if I can just find them, are to ensure that policy and services are responsive to the needs of business and visitors and promote economic activity. So, and also we've talked quite a lot about, it has been mentioned as a county of sanctuary, which is in the community and corporate plan. But the community and corporate plan also supports a thriving and ambitious place where there are vibrant town centres where businesses can grow and develop. So I do think, you know, we need to take account of these things. And I think also in the community and corporate plan, there is the I can't actually find it now, but there is a part of that says that we should involve citizens in our decision-making processes, and I think that's on community consultation. That's been missing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Card, would you like to answer that point, please?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the points raised, Councillor Brown. I think, you know, I'll kind of return to what I said about the challenges of consultation when entering into leases in the community. And I was trying to think to myself, I wonder if I can think of one use for that building which every single person would be satisfied with. And I couldn't do it. And one thing I've learned since doing this role for a limited period of time, I'll admit, is that no matter what you do, you will not please everybody. You need to take a course of action which you think is well reasoned and justified and it has got the best interest of our community at heart. Something I'd also add, it's not come up in earlier discussions about some of the commercial nature of the lease. I think it's quite important to mention that the building was offered on a full repairing lease. That actually doesn't make it very attractive to businesses, and I think you can see that in the tender responses that we got. It's a huge commitment to take on a building of that age. I've got more.
Yeah. Sorry, could I interrupt? Because actually the only tenders that came in were under D1 class. Thank you.
That's got nothing to do with whether it's a repairing lease or not.
I know, but
okay, that's enough. Move on, please.
Which is a significant investment for any business. And in fact, you highlighted about trying to make sure our high streets are vibrant and busy. And in fact, I think this use absolutely speaks to that. I really hope it's going to bring a load of people into our town centre on a Friday afternoon. People will be using the shops, they will be using the cafes, and it will strengthen our high street. It won't weaken it. And kind of even better for the existing businesses is it doesn't compete with any of them. It really seems in that case to be a win-win for me.
Okay, thank you. Right, Councillor Harris, did you wish to come back at this point?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Please be brief.
Yes, I will. I just want to address a point made by Councillor Callard, reference to the scrutiny side of where we're constantly, and more is happening with scrutiny. Things are falling off the planner. It's not being done right. I've been here a long time, Councillor Callard. It's the worst session I know as a councillor in scrutiny. Things aren't being done right. And you said about some dates. How the heck can you put something on a planner the day after, or have a meeting the day after scrutiny is sat? That's immorally not right. And the evidence-based it's there. That is not right. And my last question, Chair, is who were the other consultees in this? Because I know Councillor Wright was. And I know there was no response from Councillor Wright. Was there any other consultees? Were Abergavenny Town Council a consultee in all this? Because I see they've got made good representation today, but were they a consultee, or were they a consultee after the Cabinet meeting? Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I know. Councillor Card?
Thank you, Chair. On the timing of the planner, and I know for the members of the public this might be quite like a niche topic, but are you talking about the decision to make hand the property over to landlord services, or are you talking about the decision to award the lease?
I'm talking about decisions in general, but the decision to hand over to property services also. I've got the dates here.
Yeah, you mentioned them earlier.
Yeah,
but
the true and accurate.
Like, if you had an issue with that decision, you could have called it in and you didn't.
As reference to the same day, because the select committee could have actually, if it was on the planner, the select committee would have possibly had a look at it, as you know, if it's on there. But if it's not on the planner, how the heck do we do that? What you're saying is we've all got to go to cabinet, or our leaders have got to go to cabinet, and we've got to come back here. And it's like today, Councillor Callard, we shouldn't be having this discussion today. We should have actually had this discussion some time ago. In a closed session, it does not matter. We are responsible, right? We could have had that, and we could have ironed a lot of these problems out, reference to pre-cabinet. But that did not happen. And my point I'm making is, this seems to be a running pattern at the moment. It must change. And my last question is, who are the other consultees?
Councillor Callard?
Thank you, Councillor Howarth. I mean, you say this is the worst session, but these rules have been in place for well before my time, which is why I think, in a way, it's odd that you decide to call this decision in rather than those countless other decisions. The consultees to the Cabinet report are listed at the bottom of the Cabinet report. You can read them.
And that is it? Nobody else? Not town council or anything?
No.
Okay.
When the papers were published,
yes.
So when they became public, which is a week before council, I made the courtesy to call the principal officer of Abergavenny Town Council to let them know that that decision had been made.
Right. So. Okay, I think we stop there on that, please, and move on to Councillor Dimmock has a question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think considering the duration of the lease, which I'd be interested to know at what point a 30-year lease would be agreed that it would be acceptable. Obviously, there's been many questions around lack of consultation, and I suppose more a comment than a question now. This seems to be a reoccurring problem, and obviously, when we talk about Tudor Day Street, I just think I agree with Councillor Howarth's point that there needs to be some lessons learned. But moving forward, what steps were taken to assess whether this period would result in a fair representation of the potential leases? And why was it not kept consistently on the council forward work programme, council and forward plan? And going forward, how does the council plan to ensure ongoing transparency and engagement post-decision?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Callard.
Thank you, Councillor Dimmock. On that first question about scrutiny, I know we keep coming back to it, but in the context of awarding leases, I'm trying to understand what function scrutiny can play when we go through a transparent scoring process and we have a winner of that process, for us then to come to a committee and for the committee to say, we don't like who won this scoring, for whatever reason it might be, we want you to go back and find someone else. And then we go back and find someone else. And then we come back to scrutiny and you say, we don't like this person either. We don't like this organisation either. So then we go back to market and we come back. Like, do you see, I'm just thinking operationally how that can function.
Okay, can I come back on that?
Sure.
I think I see scrutiny as also a path for people to engage in the decision-making process. We have public forums at the start of every scrutiny committee, and that provides an opportunity for residents that any decision the council make, whether it be a positive or a negative, it provides people that path to feed their views in. And I don't want to go back and look at decisions that have been made and have caused public upset, but there have been some big decisions made that hasn't gone through scrutiny, and this can be avoided. This meeting can be avoided because people can have their say. That's what we're part of. We're part of a democracy function, and there wouldn't be a call in today because the decisions are going through to scrutiny.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Callard.
So, sorry, Councillor, but you are saying that after a lease has been awarded, it should be post-decision scrutiny?
No,
no.
So before a decision's made, it should be scrutinised?
Well, I think if you're making a decision to dispose of a building, that should go through scrutiny.
A decision to dispose of a building goes, once it's been, the process is that it is declared surplus to requirements in Cabinet. That decision can be called in. It hasn't been in this case. But if people feel strongly that a council should hold on to assets, then there is a mechanism to do that. I would also add that as a council, we own lots of assets, but we're not in the business of hanging on to things which we don't need. It's an unnecessary expense for the council. So we will seek to enter agreements where possible. We will dispose of assets where we think it's prudent to do so. We spend hundreds of millions of pounds a year. If we need assets, as we've shown recently with our recent acquisition of a number of homes for looked after children, we will acquire them. We have that capability. So there's, in my mind, there's not much use in us keeping empty buildings, just leaving them empty as a kind of just in case we might need them in a few years' time. I don't think that serves our communities.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
We'll move on, but I could come back on that.
Okay, thank you. Right, now I'm mindful now of us all moving on. Is there any other members, Council?
Sorry, Chair, I did ask a question about the lease term. When?
Of course you did. I do apologise. Yes, you did.
Sorry, Ben. Sorry, Councillor Callard.
That's just fine, Councillor Dimmock. The lease term was part of the tender submission. It's not something that MCC offered. It was part of the tender submission. It's something that I'm comfortable with, actually. Within our lease agreements, we have a number of mechanisms whereby we can review certain aspects of that lease in order that we can, for example, maintain value for money, making sure the tenants are upholding their side of the agreement. But what that long agreement does enable, as Nick Keys mentioned earlier, is it allows businesses, groups to access that grant funding. And I don't think it's unfair to say that a lot of our beautiful buildings in this county are held together by grant funding. So where possible, if I think that, indeed, if the officers think that a long lease is possible, for me, I think it's always a good option because it does allow that external funding which protects our heritage.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Councillor Butler has her hand up. I was just wondering, is it relevant to this? Or would you like it as private? Okay, you like it now. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for allowing me to back in. I want to make some sort of observations, really, Councillor Callard. I get that this is a difficult meeting for you, and I'm glad that the people of Abergavenny and the rest of Monmouthshire can hear, how the process has been done. I'd question the fact that Cabinet gives this decision enough oxygen. A lot of people didn't know it was happening. And I'm not sure how many people would agree that consultation afterwards is acceptable. We've called it in because we don't think it is. And none of us, under any circumstances, think it's a good idea that that lovely building, the Carnegie Library, has been empty for years. But it's, until it's brought to your attention, it not. And I think what's the problem with asking the people of Abergavenny what they want to happen to this iconic building? Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Collard.
Thank you. I think, I don't want to labour the point about, about scrutiny before or after, but I think I've explained the operational difficulties with talking about scrutinising lease decisions. Like we act as a council in a number of different ways, but where we act as a landlord, we kind of cross between, we are a public body, but we are also in that way, I would say more of a corporate body. Your point about asking the residents of Abergavenny what to do with the building is a really interesting one. But it's a real challenge because, you remember the story of Boaty McBoatface. But that aside, you ask 1,000 people what they want to happen, you'll get 500 different responses. It's kind of, as I mentioned earlier, that no matter, I can't think of a use for this building that someone wouldn't object to. As elected members, it's our responsibility to stand up, represent our communities, represent our county, and make that judgment ourselves. And then our residents can decide at the ballot box if they think our judgment was right or wrong. That's what we stand on, isn't it? That's democracy, and I'm happy with that. You raised a point about whether Cabinet gave it enough oxygen, and lots of people weren't aware that it was brought to Cabinet. I suppose it was our judgment that actually taking it, elevating it away from being a delegated decision into Cabinet, I think you'd certainly say that was in the right direction, wouldn't you, in terms of giving something more oxygen? You might argue about that it's not enough, but I believe that was the right thing to do. Whether people know what goes on in their council day in, day out, I think is a tough one, because with the best will in the world, many people in our communities, and myself included before I became a councillor, just get on with their lives. They aren't scanning to see what happens at council. As much as we might like to think they are, people are getting on with their lives. They're going to work, they're looking after their families. But yeah, sometimes things come to the surface. I suppose the question is alluding to, should we have taken this as a decision to full council? I don't think that would have been the right thing to do, but I also don't think it would have had any influence over the result. So I'm really happy with the way this process has been conducted within the constraints that we've got. We can keep talking about the scrutiny of it, and I think I've made my thoughts quite clear there about the operational challenge of making that work. It is a challenge, and I am open to ideas because I believe in public engagement and I believe in public scrutiny. But it's a challenging area. Sorry, Chair, repeating myself.
Yeah, you are. Sorry, I just thought I'd save you a little there. Right, so moving on from that, I think it's now time to ask any other councillors. No? So I was going to, you would like to speak? Okay. No, please. Are you sure you want to speak now, not in private session? You're happy with that? Yep.
Right, well, thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak. I have been absolutely heartbroken. I've been really disgusted, to be honest, by the graffiti and some of the hateful comments we've seen on social media.
Again,
responses.
I'm sorry.
But I do appreciate that. I know. I appreciate that's not the call-in.
And call-in only.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. 3 items.
I will. Yep, they are under 3 subheadings. So it will come as a surprise to nobody that I am going to support the Cabinet decision to lease the old library building to Monmouthshire Muslim Community Association, because at my very first Cabinet meeting a few weeks ago, which was 6 days after I was appointed to the Cabinet, I did vote to support this proposed lease. But right now I'm here in my capacity as the ward member for Growfield, where the old library building is located. And although I have been criticised for not speaking at the Cabinet meeting, I do have a few minutes worth of things to say now, if you will give me that opportunity. This decision, I believe, is both justified and strategic, and as I say, I will aim to speak directly to the points raised on the call-in. So, under scrutiny process and community engagement, yes, scrutiny is a cornerstone of transparent decision-making, and rightly so. But the proposal to lease the old library building was made in line with established procedures, which none of the call-in signatories have ever objected to before. I chaired People Scrutiny Committee for a year, and nobody ever raised this with me as being a problematic or inadequate process for our residents or communities, despite many leases being granted without consultation during that time. To quote directly from the stated grounds of the call-in, public interest issues of this magnitude should go through full scrutiny to ensure community consultation and transparency. Why, then, has this never been raised before, either during this administration or previous ones? I don't believe that there was any outcry, say, over awarding a similar length lease to the excellent Abergavenny Community Trust when they took on the running of the old Park Street School, which is also in Grofield Ward. And the community centre there continues to be a fantastic asset for residents and visitors. And I've got no doubt that, given the opportunity, a mosque and an Islamic community centre will similarly enhance the vibrancy, social opportunity and inclusive culture of Abergavenny, where, unlike the call-in signatories, I live and I'm proud to represent. The proposal from Monmouthshire Muslim Community Association scored highest across a matrix that assessed demand, viability, use suitability and financial standing. It was not awarded because of a political bias or a personal preference, but because of a structured and evidence-based evaluation.
Right?
Yes, sorry, Chair. Okay, a structured and evidence-based evaluation. I do understand why some residents and businesses feel concerned that they weren't consulted, though I do refer you back to what Councillor Callard and others have said about the usual procedure for commercial leases. However, Monmouthshire Muslim Community Association themselves have committed to a community engagement process before occupation, and this is something that I understand will happen through a phased introduction, interfaith dialogue and neighbourhood collaboration. I'm sure that concerns around traffic, parking, deliveries to local businesses such as the Grofield pub will be addressed as part of that process. And yes, parking is already challenging around that area, and I know that all too well, given that I live a couple of streets away from the building that we're discussing, and I only have on-street parking myself. But there are a number of car parks within easy walking distance, including the very large Byfield Lane car park, which, as you may know, is free 6 days a week. I understand that people using the mosque would be asked to use these car parks and not to park on residential streets. I'm also aware of concerns around noise and light pollution, and I would like to thank Liz Powell, who we heard from earlier and who lives in the almshouses, for taking the time to talk to me and highlight the concerns of the vulnerable older women who live there. I don't doubt that representatives from the Muslim Community Association will be willing to meet with her and other residents to find ways to ensure that the almshouses are not adversely impacted. As I've said, there will be community consultation and engagement conducted by future tenants prior to the full use of this building. There was no formal planning consultation process, as there was no change of use planned, no change of use application required. And that's not a fault of this specific project. It's a structural aspect of D1 classification and planning law, which is not within the County Council's gift to change. All covenants on the building have also been assessed through impartial legal consideration conducted by experts and not by elected members. There is nothing in this lease that violates any of them. Sorry. On timing and market exposure, there has been concern that the property was only marketed for 4 weeks during December, and I understand that criticism. However, despite the relatively short window, multiple tenders were submitted and the process was competitive. As a result, the chosen proposal has met the Council's duties on financial optimisation, but it will also further our commitments to inclusivity and community wellbeing. In terms of financial value and long-term sustainability, the lease may seem like a modest rental figure, but our second highest scoring was, as Councillor Callard said, it was of a similar value. So this seems to be, to me, where the market is at for leasing a listed building which will require a lot of work to maintain. But let's also remember that there is more to public benefit measure than market rent. The Local Government Act requires us to ensure value not just in pounds and pence, but in community impact, efficiency and effectiveness. And this lease achieves all three. We are not just leasing a building, we are investing in social value, and the Act absolutely recognises that aspect of best value. So in conclusion, I don't believe that this was a rushed or reckless decision. It was measured, it was legally sound, it was financially sensible, and it was socially meaningful. By awarding this lease to MMCA, we would be bringing a treasured building back into active community use, supporting diversity and integration, and fulfilling our duty to optimise an underused resource. It's also worth noting, as we've heard, that the proposed lease has the full support of Abergavenny Town Council, who are all representatives living in our town, part of our community, meeting with our residents day in, day out, and not just turning up to knock on a few doors when they think it's politically opportune. So I ask committee members to let this decision stand. I mean, Chair, I've come in for a lot of personal criticism.
Sorry, Chair, I'm not turning this into a little war, all right? It's not happening.
Okay.
So please, respectful. Remember at the beginning of the meeting, respectful to everybody. And that includes, by the way, talking while someone else is talking, please. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to ask committee members, please, to let this decision stand and support a future where Monmouthshire reflects the best of our values: openness, fairness and community. This is not just a lease. It is a message that Monmouthshire is a place for everyone, a place where policy meets principle, and we celebrate the very best of ourselves and our diverse communities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, I'm sorry, Councillor Harris.
There's a bit of clarity, Chairman.
Okay.
The clarity is that actually Park Street School was called in for exactly the same reasons we're here today.
Okay, all right, thank you. No, that's enough, everybody. I believe it's now time to ask the question, and I'll put the committee to the vote. Whether or not, Councillor Brown, is it really necessary? I don't think it is at the moment, do you? I don't.
I just wanted to add a comment about what's being said, if that's all right.
Can it wait for what? I'm sorry, who's talking? Because I can hear other people talking. All right. Now, I'm sorry. I think it's time to ask the committee if we wish to go to private session. So the committee members, and Councillor Harris today has that privilege because he's standing in for Councillor Emma Bryn. So I ask the question. I'm not quite sure how we do this now, so I'll hand to Hazel, please. Thank you.
Yep, so we have a process for moving into an exempt part of a meeting, providing the officers made the assessment for the basis for that exemption through applying a public interest test. So Part 4 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, paragraphs 12 to 18, can enable the exclusion of press and public for the discussion of exempt information, providing that an officer, who is the report author, has made that assessment that the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. So we will now ask the appropriate officer, which is the report author, Nick, to advise us on the basis for that exemption, and then the chair will request the committee whether they want to accept the officer determination and vote on it before we would move into any exempt session. Nick.
Okay, thank you. So the grounds for exemption is paragraph 14 of Local Government Act Schedule 12A Part 4, which is information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information. Thank you.
Okay, so I now look to take a vote from the committee, please. So the words will be, I assume, who would like to go to a private session, please? Can I have raised hands on those that are voting? So online, who's voting online, please? Do we need to take names?
Yes.
Right, okay. So we have Councillor Harris, we have Councillor Brown. Councillor Dimmick, was your hand up then? Yes, Councillor Thomas Davis, is your hand up, please? Or not? I don't know. Is that a nod or a yes? Wave your hand. Yes, thank you. So that is carried. So we will now proceed to a private session. So what that means for you, general public, thank you very much for sitting through this. You're welcome to go and sit out and wait in the gallery whilst we go to talk through all that, and then rejoin us for the final bit if you wish. If you don't, I understand, you're welcome to go and watch the final bit live on telly. Thank you ever so much for attending. It means a lot, so thank you. I think, yeah, 10 minutes, everybody.